Mini-episode 338 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode number 338. It's Rick Morris and Kyle Ross coming back at you again to break down the NFL for you. Coming off another bad week for myself last week, 6-7, 0-3 on my big three, 0-1 on my lock, 60, 68, and 6 on the course of the season, 8-19 on the big three, 3-6 on the locks. Kyle at 2-3 last week, so 14 and 17 overall. Still a much better year than me and much closer to profitability. You're right there, K-Dog. You can pull this one out, my friend.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I thought the second half's a lot better than the first half. I don't know what's going on here. I just don't. I'm getting, pretty soon, hopefully people might just want to, bet against us or something on these picks. But I'm telling you, second half's going to be better than the first. I think last week, this is a typical handicapper move. Should come on the asterisk because, we recorded the show earlier in the week, which was good, by the way, for a variety of reasons. I felt very ill late in the week, and then, of course, wound up being even more ill after some of these results. But, had I known, I'll still take the loss for record keeping, but had I known Jeff Toole would be starting for Buffalo last week, I certainly would not have played them. Ironically enough, they actually outplayed the Chiefs, but still didn't cover. So,
well, yeah,
it is what it is. As somebody we both used to know and said.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what Boat Shoes would be calling it. Hey, Boat Shoes, how you doing? But as far as it goes with another one, too, I just want to say we both had Houston Sunday night. The most hated loss in history that Houston had. And I will tell you, this is shameful on the part of Indianapolis.
Which is saying something.
Taking that win,
Indianapolis.
A distraction finish right out of the NWO. This is playing the Heels music on the PA system. And then for a team that paraded around with Chuck Strong last year, okay. It's okay to benefit from a tragedy of your coach, but let's just exploit another team's tragedy here.
Well, you sound like a real jilted better if I ever heard one right now. Oh my God! I do wish Gary Kubiak the best. I'll just tell you what. You don't want to go this route, but when the name Wade Phillips and head coach were uttered in the same sentence last week, I knew we were doomed. And it was ugly. It was bad just having that queasy feeling the whole second half in your stomach, and just watched it unfold. They get the 2-point conversion at the end for the cover. It was bad. And, that game that you talk about, the worst loss ever for Houston, who knows? I just think it was, to be honest with you, another horrible one and a horrible season for them. That's just the way that basically their year's gone. It's the way Indianapolis' year's gone. So
exactly.
Yeah, it was tough overall. I did throw that total in though. That saved me a little bit on Monday night.
You
speaking
did.
of injuries, Aaron, we'll talk about this, I know, in a few minutes, but the Aaron Rodgers injury, looms as big over the next month of the season as really anything.
It does. It really does. Thankfully for me personally, I was able to pick up Case Keenum in my fantasy league, but that really hurts, and that's going to hurt Green Bay for as long as he's out. As we say every week, the Thursday night game, you probably aren't hearing this in time for, or at least not long before the game at the very least. So we've always got the FDH Lounge pick up at the FDH Lounge Twitter account. So we, as always, won't dwell long on this one. By the way, the bye week teams, New England, the Jets, Kansas City, and Cleveland. It's Washington at Minnesota in the Thursday night game this week. A chance for the Vikings to avenge their loss in the 1988 NFC Championship game. Redskins are laying 2.5 on the road. It opened at 1. Minnesota under Leslie Frazier has been horrible on short weeks. It's one of the worst years in Vikings history. Washington is in the worst division in football. The word worst keeps coming up a lot with these two teams here. But Washington is still at the periphery of contention. They still have something to play for. They have a little bit more momentum. I say they go in and win this one on the road and cover the 2.5 Thursday night K-Dog.
The whole road favorite Ricky rearing his head at the start of the program here. I'll say this. You talk about worst. You got two of the worst defenses in the league as well. Last week, you and I both liked Miami. I gave out Miami as a play. That was a nice outright winner with the old safety in overtime, one of the more unusual endings to an NFL game you'll ever see. I like this week's game a lot less because I'm kind of where you're at in that Washington's a team that has momentum. They are not out of the division race by any means, obviously. They remember last year's second-half surge. You'll probably hear a lot about that in the next couple of weeks, especially if they win here. But I don't want to lay points with Washington. I wonder if this one's as easy as simply just looking to go over the total. I know the numbers has been bet up almost a full field goal during the week, but these two defenses are awful. 2 weeks ago, Minnesota didn't even force Green Bay to punt. So they've yet to hold anyone under 23 points. And I'll say this, these are two teams, two playoff teams from a year ago, believe it or not. You and I both have progressing this year. That has been the case, Minnesota more so, but then again, I think we both thought that would be the case. Washington, though, I think is certainly stabilizing more. And, you know, if they win here, they have a big division game next week, a revenge spot against Philadelphia, but I'm passing here. So
I kind of figured you would.
Thursday game. Yeah. No.
I knew you were going to.
The road team is clearly the better play, but they're, you know me and road favorites don't like them. They don't mix.
I know that. I know that's the case. No question about it. Moving on here through the slate this week, our first game up to examine is Tennessee hosting Jacksonville. This one, the Titans are laying 11.5. This had opened at 14.5. So a little bit of a come down here in the line, a field goal squarely at the moment. And this is, again, a game, I've talked about this a couple different times during the season, instances where I'm a little dubious that anybody should be laying double-digit points in a game. Tennessee's wins, aside from that one over the Jets, they've been more workmanlike. Even their losses have been fairly workmanlike. Last week they beat St. Louis, but it was not a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. Jacksonville coming off a bye week. If there's ever a chance for them to rise up, I don't think they're going to win the game, but I think they can at least come in the back door. And I'm trying to watch how many times I make that kind of a play because it bit me a couple times last week. But this is one where I'm going to. Jacksonville, I don't think they can win, but I would take them with the 11.5.
Yeah, so would I. Tennessee, while probably going to be a popular survivor week or survivor play this week, because let's be honest, when are you really going to use the Titans in something like that? But it's just too many points to lay. You talk about Jacksonville being off the bye. Now, underdogs off a bye, believe it or not a winning proposition against the point spread. Slightly under 50%, I think around 46, 47%, to be honest with you, since 2003. But double-digit dogs getting more than a touchdown in division games, typically a profitable spot here. And, you know, road underdogs on a losing streak of 7 or more games cashed a 67% clip the last 10 years. So Jacksonville, not a recommended play, but I'll give them a check mark next to their name.
Okay, giving them their due in that one. Moving on.
I just think that, I mean, you know, still looking for that first win off a bye. I mean, you know, other than getting 26.5 points, when else can you really like Jacksonville this much?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And again, the league's worst team, but this might be a decent spot for them with the points, as we both feel is the case. Next up here, I have to say, this is one of my toughest games to pick of the week, and maybe one of my toughest games of the year. So this was not going to be a recommended play either way for me, this next one here. The Eagles at 4-5, they are at Lambeau Field, Packers 5-3. Fox has got the A-team on this one, 1 o'clock Eastern Time Sunday. Buck Aikman and the delicious Pam Oliver roaming the sidelines here. This is one where, again, you just don't know what to expect because of the Green Bay quarterbacking situation. We know Aaron Rodgers is going to be out. There's been some speculation about signing Matt Flynn. In the interim, it's going to be Seneca Wallace one more week. I, as a traumatized Browns fan, certainly have my memories of Seneca Wallace. But certain systems are just more conducive to plugging a quarterback in. There's a reason that Matt Flynn right now would give his left nut to be re-signed by the Packers, because it's a chance to rehabilitate his career and possibly get another chance elsewhere. Remember what he did a couple of years ago in a backup spot there. This is a thing where I expect a better Seneca Wallace performance this week. James Jones now healthy. Finley's out for the year. That hurts. I went back and forth on this one because Philadelphia looked so unstoppable offensively last week, but never play just off of what a team did a week ago. Green Bay at home. I'm queasy taking them without Aaron Rodgers because I think he's the best player in the league. Yeah, better than Peyton Manning. I said it. But I'll go with Green Bay in this spot here. I think the offensive parts are going to come together, congeal, and be able to take out Philly.
Total pass for me, obviously. I just can't handicap this game in lieu of the Rodgers injury. I will say I like where your head's at, and the public's going to be scared, obviously, to take Green Bay without Rodgers. Now, most fans who don't, follow betting closely, I think, have this feeling that players are worth more to the spread than they actually are. And to be honest with you, there aren't a ton of players in the league whose presence makes a difference of more than like 2 points. There just aren't many at all. Now that said, Aaron Rodgers is clearly one of them. He is. I saw where he's right. Him and Manning and then Drew Brees are all worth over a touchdown, I believe. And Tom Brady. Those are the only 4 players in the league whose presence or absence makes a full touchdown difference, which is obviously huge here. But I'm just passing. No, I've got to wait to see. Green Bay, in addition to Rodgers, let's not forget, they have a ton of other injuries too. So I just, no way. This to me, I immediately drew an X to this game after Monday night and said, no, thank you.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It just is very, very difficult, not even the word for it, to get a read on that. When you look at how hot Philly comes in unexpectedly after what happened last week, and then Green Bay with the loss of Aaron Rodgers. This is, I think, again, one of the toughest games of the year to examine. Another tough one coming up. A lot of intriguing matchups this week, even when the teams involved aren't that good, and that certainly sums up this one. The Buffalo Bills are getting 3 points at Pittsburgh this week, had been 3.5 at the open, so it's wavered just slightly in that regard. It's a situation where Pittsburgh comes in at their lowest ebb of one of their worst years in a long time. Buffalo comes in having blown a chance to beat Kansas City last week. They do get back their starting quarterback, E.J. Manuel, who got them off to a very good start this year. Ultimately, you talked before about using the head, using the gut. I've gone with the gut a lot of times this season, and maybe that's one of the reasons that I've had probably my worst season in memory. But ultimately, I don't know how to do it any other way, particularly when looking at a game like this. I just don't think the Bills have the toughness yet to go in and win a game like this on the road. It's a very unforgiving place, Heinz Field, even in the worst of times, which this is. I don't think Buffalo has it in them to win a game like this. I would say take Pittsburgh, lay the 3 at home.
Yeah, the Sharps got up all the 3.5s that were out there. I just don't see any value either way with the number now at a flat 3. You mentioned Manuel. You're saying he's confirmed to come back? I knew they were leaning that way. I certainly like Buffalo a lot better. Okay.
It looks like it as well. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, that's just, just again, with the uncertain status of the quarterback situation, I'm not comfortable giving anything out here. I will say this, and this goes against
Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. This just in. He is out, apparently. Getting this while we're on the air here. Yeah, it looks like he's not going to go. That makes it even more convincing in my case.
Okay, sure. So, and here's another thing that kind of, might make some people lean Pittsburgh. Buffalo is one of the few teams that has not had its bye week yet. They could be getting tired playing a 10th week in a row. So, yeah, on the road. And, off a real frustrating loss last week as well. So, I can't really, 3 seems right between these two teams. I wouldn't be surprised if Pittsburgh won the game by field goal.
It does. But let me just say also, too, as we kind of expand the theory, as we've been doing a little bit this year, about the week after you play Seattle, the car crash effect. We've heard this in recent years with Baltimore and with Pittsburgh. You look at the Kansas City defense this year. If we're going to spread this out a little bit here, playing Pittsburgh, going in there a week after playing Kansas City, there could be an effect.
Yeah, I mean, and again, they outplayed the Chiefs. That 100-yard touchdown interception return that the Chiefs had, I mean, that was the game, basically.
It was.
That was it. They didn't score a touchdown. The Chiefs did. Chiefs won by 10. There you go. I mean, so
yeah,
Buffalo's is I think they're better than Vegas gives them credit for. Most people give them credit for, but just not enough points to play with on the road here in their 10th straight game, by the way.
I agree with that. The aforementioned cheap winning Indianapolis Colts from last week's game here, they started off laying 11 at home against St. Louis. It's down to 9.5 at this point. Coming off that win, which was, as we said, anything but clean in the middle last week, ultimately, this feels like in a very interesting spot for the Colts. You got a primetime game next week against Tennessee, a chance to put away the division at this point in time because Tennessee's going to be coming in with an additional win playing Jacksonville this week. So it's a chance to separate there. It's a chance to stay in the mix for a bye in the AFC, and this game comes in the middle. Again, it's a tough team to get up for, quite frankly, St. Louis. This looks like a classic sandwich game. I said I'm trying to limit myself on backdoor plays, but I'm going to make another one here. I don't think St. Louis is going to win this game. I don't think they'll be that taken for granted, but I think they come in the back door. I like the 9.5.
Just want to back up to Tennessee because there was something in my notes that I wanted to bring up with them. They look, I mean, you brought up that they're likely to win this week, and they'll head into a Thursday night big division showdown next week in Indianapolis, likely at 5-4. The Titans appear to be the team that's going to be that stinky playoff contender that at the end of the year everyone's like, how are the Tennessee Titans in the playoff picture? I'm telling you, Ricky, I looked at their schedule. They have not played Jacksonville once yet. So they've got 2 games against Jacksonville on the stretch. They're going to be in this thing till the end. We talked about in our mid-season review last week, who's going to get that last playoff spot in the AFC. It's going to be it's still wide open, but I'll tell you what, San Diego's got a much harder schedule than Tennessee. San Diego's the team who I liked to get it last week. And then you've got the equally stinky Jets who are off this week. Tennessee has beaten both the Jets and San Diego, by the way. So as unfathomable as it may be to me, Tennessee could be a playoff team. Just wanted to say that. Now,
you know what? I'm so glad you pointed that out because I was off. I picked them to make the playoffs last year. Now I just get to say I was a year early on them.
Yeah. Well, I thought they'd be among the worst teams in football this year. So,
me too.
The improvement on the defensive side of the ball has been pretty astounding. Now, the game that you originally asked me about, Rams Colts. First of 5 recommended plays this week is the St. Louis Rams. Loved the game a lot more at 11, I'll have to say, than 9.5. Indianapolis has now been outgained in 4 straight games, yet won all but one of those. They lost to San Diego on that Monday night, but they were outgained by Seattle. They were outgained by the Chargers. They were outgained by Denver, and then they were outgained by Houston last week. I realize that Andrew Luck is the elixir to the regression sickness that we thought might hit the Colts this year. But I just don't buy this as a 7-2 team. And maybe it's just because I thought they'd regress and I'm wrong, and maybe I'm a little bitter about it like you are about last week's loss. Pardon me, they're 6-2, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But I just don't see this as a team who's built to win big like the odds makers are asking them to here. I mean, I know they really whipped on the Niners that 1 week, and they have a big win over the Jaguars too. But other than that, I'm seeing a win by 3, a win by 6, a win by 6, a win by 4. This is not a team that wins big very often. I'll take the St. Louis Rams plus the points.
The Rams, in that regard, the anti-Panthers. Let me just give you one more thing to reinforce what you just said there. Colts giving up 124.9 yards per game on the ground, and you would figure anyways, right? The thing you want to try and do is run the ball against them a lot, try to get Andrew Luck out of rhythm, try to work on it that way. Zach Stacy, 4.6 yards per carry. Don't look now, but the Rams might be just the kind of team to come in there and cause a little bit of havoc, if not win the game outright. But, yeah, you and I both like the points there. This next one, a very disappointing game relative to what we thought. A matchup that is a rematch of the very, very exciting NFC semifinals last year. It's Seattle at Atlanta. The Seahawks are laying 6. That's been pretty consistently the number through the course of the week here. Atlanta, with the injuries that have befallen them, they have just been a shell of themselves. The defense, again, I'll take a bullet on that one. I didn't think the defense was going to be as bad as they've been this year either. So they can't blame it all on the luck, and I can't blame it all on injuries. Looking at this one here, this is one where I just do see something of a rallying effect in this game because it was such a bitter a struggle last year in the playoffs. I think they're going to look to keep it close, but I think it's one of these things where Seattle really has something to play for, having dropped this one, a game they shouldn't have lost last year. And I think Seattle, for that reason, is going to be able to cover the number on the road.
Oh, wow. Wow. Now, yeah. I would have said the same thing a couple of weeks ago. The game you're referencing, obviously, the now infamous on the show, a game that I ranted about at great length last year, the divisional playoff game where Seattle fell down huge early, something they did, by the way, last week to an inferior foe. Stormed all the way back, and unlike last week, they were victimized at the end, lost on a late field goal. I believe the final score is 30-28 in favor of Atlanta. It's the only playoff win for the Atlanta under Mike Smith and Matt Ryan. Really, nobody except the most diehard Falcons fans thought the Falcons were the best team that day, at least after the game was over. And, Seattle's used the momentum from that game, carried over to this year. They now look like the favorites in the NFC, while Atlanta's struggling. But this is the first time the Falcons have been a home dog in 2 years. This is great value on Atlanta. Seattle has not, as much as I love Seattle, no one's been riding their bandwagon for the last 12 months more than me. They got problems right now. They're down both starting tackles. Percy Harvin's not ready to come back yet. I love this play. As much as I loved Seattle last year going into the George Dome in the playoffs, I love the Falcons as the home dog this year. This might be my favorite play of the week. Give me the 6 with Atlanta. Yeah, I really like Atlanta. To me, I just think, I know that everything came undone in that fourth quarter last week against Carolina. There was an interception return for a touchdown. Matt Ryan was just not playing very well this year. But Seattle was down 21-0 at home to Tampa Bay last week. And I was nervous because, I'm in one of these survivors. They were, our survivor pick last week, the group I'm doing it with, and we're down to 2 people. The other guy had already won in a big comeback with Dallas, so I was nervous. I watched the whole game, but I'm telling you, Seattle's got issues right now. Seattle, they'll be fine come playoff time once they're healthy again. But, no, not laying 6 points on the road. Let's remember that this team struggles on the road a little bit more. Atlanta has to have a little bit of the old Atlanta, and they'll probably lose, but they'll lose close.
Well, a little Freaky Friday on the show here as I am on Seattle and you are in Atlanta. It is a crazy, crazy world.
Yes. Love Atlanta. Yeah, and I'm on the Rams, who's your kind of trendy pick at the beginning of the year, and I didn't like them that much either. So there you go.
You and I are showing tremendous open-mindedness this week, if nothing else. Very interesting game next up here. A lot of games this week, a disproportionate number of games that I think are pivot games for the season that we're going to look back at the end of the season and see that's very instrumental. This one, it's not hard to see, at least in the one instance, how it is. I think it's instrumental on both sides. The 6-3 Bengals at the 3-5 Ravens. Greg Gumbel, Dan Deerdorf going to have the call on CBS. Cincinnati is laying 1.5 in this one and open as a pick. You look at this, the easy first thought is desperation game. Ravens needed to have any hope whatsoever of staying in the divisional race, possibly the wild card race as well. I got news for you. This is at least as big of a must-win game for the Bengals. Bengals lose this game, it's going to be a slog to win this division. They're not going to get a bye, and it's going to be the same old for the Bengals in January. Bengals win this game. The division is in the rearview mirror. You start to think about trying to angle for the bye and bigger things possibly. This is going to set the tone for the Bengals the rest of the way. They need this one badly. They lost to a decent Miami team that we didn't know how badly they were struggling internally on Thursday night. But that's not a bad loss to go to Miami and lose that game. I'm not as down on them for that. Bengals win this game and cover the 1.5 on the road because they need it just as much.
Love your handicapping there. That was very good. Because you're right. Coming out of that Thursday game, and by the way, we need to talk about the major reason why ultimately I'm laying off this game. Cincinnati's two best defensive players are now injured, not for the year, Leon Hall and Geno Atkins. That hurt. That literally hurts, man. I mean, the Bengals are not going to get a first-round bye. And I'll tell you what, unfortunately, because of some of those injuries and the inconsistent play of Andy Dalton, I have a fear. And remember, I thought the Bengals were, my pick for them was to win a playoff game this year. That was what their goal needed to be. I thought they'd get there. I'm a little concerned right now because I think they might end up as the 4 in the AFC after that loss. Now, it's a loss that I picked them to have, but Indianapolis won, and I didn't see that last week. But let's point something out about last week's loss to Miami. You mentioned it's not as bad of a loss as maybe some might think. I thought the Bengals were actually the better team, particularly on the stretch. They lost the turnover battle 4-1, which was the killer. I mean, they outgained Miami, fairly significantly in the loss. And I got to say something. Baltimore is not good. This team, look, everyone talks about, Ray Lewis was a shell of his former self last year. Ed Reed, and by the way, Ed Reed was for Houston is one of the worst free agent signings of all time. I'd just like to go on the record and say that. He's horrible this year.
Correct.
I mean, just horrible. Yeah, I mean, he is one of the worst safeties in football right now. That said, I mean, I know they lost Anquan Bolden offensively. This Baltimore team just can't score. They've averaged 17 points per game the last 3 weeks. I think kind of the knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, you need to give the ball to Ray Rice more. They were trying last week against Cleveland, and he just wasn't doing anything with it. I'm laying off this one. Cincinnati, teams coming off the Thursday game have done really well this year. They're covered like 75, 80% of the time. And you talk about the importance of the division. Cincinnati were to lose here. They then get Cleveland off a bye next week. That game's in Cleveland, and the Browns already beat the Bengals. It could be time in the AFC North. Ultimately, I got too many angles going too many different ways, and I'm laying off this game.
I know that the great Greg Cosell would agree with me on this. This might be a controversial point in some quarters. Geno Atkins, the co-best player on that team with A.J. Green. A.J. Green, more of a household name, but Geno Atkins every bit as big of a franchise player on the other side of the ball. That's a monumental loss.
I agree. I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, other than quarterback, the Bengals came into the year absolutely loaded. You really can't understate what a desperate game this is for Baltimore at home, though. I mean, they don't lose this many in a row under Harbaugh. But, God, they just gave you no reason to really back them last week against a real listless performance. It was kind of some dunderhead plays by the Browns that even kept the Ravens in that game. I mean, they just look bad. Flacco deserved to get paid, but I have a feeling that contract might hamstring the organization for the next couple of years.
I think it's going to, no question about that. And next up in the NFC North, it is the 5-3 Lions at the 5-3 Bears. Lions laying 2.5 on the road in this one, largely because of the Chicago quarterbacking situation, albeit they were still able to get by with McCown in the Sunday Nighter. Of course, a gigantic asterisk on that with what happened with the Aaron Rodgers injury. Still have a lot to prove here. I went against Detroit in this spot against Chicago earlier in the year. I was a little bit slow to believe. You talk about defining type games. This just in. We talk about the Lions. You and I picked them to win the wild card when we recorded for the rest of the season last week. This just in. With Aaron Rodgers down, they have a chance to win the division.
Yeah, they do.
They're going to go for it in this spot here. Detroit, I think, a statement game. I like them laying the 2.5 at Chicago. I learned my lesson going against them last time.
Off a bye as well, Detroit. Off a bye as well. So they've had time to prepare here.
Our friend, four-time lounge guest Kenny Albert on the call, by the way.
Okay. Well, he's got to. Yeah, I really think the Lions do have a chance to win the division, but road favorite. No, thank you. In the division, double no, thank you. But this is weird. I think I would actually like Chicago more in this game had they not won Monday night, because, it was such a desperate state of affairs going into that game against Green Bay. They got the win. I don't know. First of all, I don't know if Cutler's playing here or not. If you can guarantee me that the Bears will knock Matt Stafford out in the first quarter, then I'll probably like him a lot more. But I'm laying off this one. This, to me, is one of the hardest games to call of the week. You talked about how there's a series of them. This is right near the top for me. If Detroit does win this game, I'm telling you, we could be, what a Thanksgiving. It'll be interesting to see if Rodgers can get back in time for that Thanksgiving game, which is at home against Green Bay. Woof, well, that'll be a big one. That will be a real big one.
We shall see. A battle of two teams squarely in the playoff hunt in the NFC. The Panthers, who are on the periphery at 5-3, at the 6-2 49ers. Tom Brennan and Brian Billick on the lovely Laura Oakman at Candlestick Park for this one on Fox. The 49ers laying 6, had been 6.5 at the open. This is another one that I really wavered on back and forth, but I just think, again, in looking at this, that both teams have really been on a roll recently here.
Yes, they have.
I don't think, but it's been a couple of weeks, I think, since the 49ers have seen a defense the likes of what the Panthers are bringing. I think the 49ers are going to win this game. I'm trying to limit myself on the backdoor plays, but this is going to be another one of them. I like Carolina getting the 6 at San Francisco.
At the start of this program, I debated making this a 5th recommended play, believe it or not, the other way, with San Francisco. I'm not going to. Here's an interesting trend. Favorites of more than 3 points off a bye cover roughly 65% of the time.
Wow.
Carolina, we know about them in a close game decided by 7 points or less. 2-14 with Rivera and Newton at the helm. I brought that stat up numerous times, and it hasn't mattered over the last month because they've been blowing everybody out. They look real good, but they've beaten all bad teams, and I think ultimately they'll come up a little short. It's going to be right around the number. Notice, if Warriors win by a touchdown, they cover here. But in a battle of two hot teams, generally you'd want to take the points. I'm going to give a mild recommendation to San Francisco, but it doesn't get recommended like I thought it might initially. Carolina has just looked, and Cam Newton in particular, has just looked very good. So I'm going to chicken out here. I was actually going to give the 49ers, but no, I can't do it. Carolina's played too well. Carolina's played too well for me to give a recommended play against them.
Still a couple games here left in our remaining window. Next up, the 2-6 Texans at 4-4 Arizona. The Cardinals are laying 3 in this one, had been 2.5 at the open. Houston coming off, as we indicated the other night, that Montreal screw job at the hands of the Indianapolis Colts, taking advantage of their coach having a stroke and using that to come back and win. This is another one that I really wavered on back and forth because it feels like a desperation-type spot for Houston here. Again, Wade Phillips on the sidelines. Arizona's been a Jekyll and Hyde team, playing much better at home. Under the circumstances, I like Arizona to hold them off and lay the 3.
Two great underrated defenses here.
Yes.
I think Football Outsiders has Arizona as their top defense in the league right now with the DVOA statistic. Using traditional statistics, Houston
at home they're unbeatable. They've been more vulnerable on the road, but at home they've been unbeatable.
Yeah, and I told you before the year that for whatever reason, Arizona picked up a lot of wise guys' steam. So I'm not going against them. At the same time, God, you just think Houston's due once in a while, but Wade Phillips, the interim coach. This is again one that I just scratched off right away. Just no, thank you.
Yeah, I don't blame you because it was just one of the really, really brutal ones here this week. As is the Monday Nighter, the last of the ones here before my big 3 recommendations. It's the 4-4 Dolphins at the 0-8 Buccaneers. And by the way, we talked about it before. Jacksonville, the worst team in the league, and probably the worst team we've seen in the league in some time, at least since the 0-16 Lions. And yet, credit to Gus Bradley, at least out of the Florida teams, they have the best locker room in the league. Miami, we all know about what's been happening with the Richie Incognito situation. Tampa Bay, Everybody hates the coach, plus the locker room is full of staph infection. Jacksonville, at least they're coming out and grinding every week, even though they suck. These teams here, this is a classic situation here with all the turmoil in Miami, a must-win spot to stay on the periphery of things here, and yet, see if you can follow my logic. I understand that everybody wants Schiano gone, fans included. It was pretty ugly the last time they had a primetime game in Tampa, but everybody knows he's gone at this point. I almost feel like it's safe to root for them again if you're the fans there. We've talked about that in the past, the notion of fans being in exile or not. I think they're going to be rallying to see this team hopefully win its first game on Monday night. I think they're going to. I think this is the spot where they can finally get over the hump. Miami missing 2 key offensive linemen, a lot of turmoil internally. Joe Philbin, I think, if he didn't lose the team, he certainly deserves to have with his performance there. Tampa Bay to rise up. They're getting 2.5. It had been 3.5 at the open, but I still like Tampa Bay with the points they're getting and to win outright.
I'd love to go with you, Ricky, but I can't. Miami played, here's the thing. I can't go with Miami either because, you mentioned the turmoil. Richie Incognito, he's a real piece of crap. And I don't trust this team as a road favorite. But they are coming up. We talked about teams that come off the Thursday game. They've got the extra long week, not playing on Monday night. So that's a good spot. And Tampa Bay's coming off a horrible loss at Seattle. And we know how teams do the week after playing the Seahawks. So situationally, incognito or no incognito, it is favorable for Miami, believe it or not. So I'm late. So again, I'm passing here. Tampa Bay is the only. The Vegas has them significantly better than Jacksonville if the two teams were to play on a neutral field, but they're still not good enough for my money, and nor is Miami laying points away from home. ESPN,
I understand all of those points.
Yeah, ESPN, who, by the way, always gets the raw deal, seemingly with these Monday night games, kind of gets the break with the incognito story, don't you think? Because at least they're going to have something to talk about. I mean, before that, my God, they'd be staring at this thing. What the hell are we going to talk about for 3 hours?
Yeah, well,
no one does it. And remember, no one does it better than the worldwide leader. Thank you very much.
It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to bring in a Ouija board and an urn with the ashes of Dr. Joyce Brothers to try to get her thoughts on Richie Incognito's state of mind. So, you never know what ESPN is going to try and do.
Good Lord.
Yeah. All right, we get to my big 3 plays now. Hopefully a comeback. It had been a comeback until last week with the 0-3. It had been, I think, a stretch of 8-4 prior to that. So,
and 2 of my recommended plays are still to come. 2 of my recommended plays are still to come. Let's see if there's some overlap here.
I don't think it'll be on this one. It's the 7-1 Broncos at the 4-4 Chargers. The line here is Denver laying a touchdown. It's been pretty much the case all week, laying a touchdown. Good old road favorite Ricky strikes again. I got to tell you, and looking at this here, I feel like Denver is just coming out of the trough. Things were seeming a little bit too easy for them, I really feel like, and I think they were starting to take things for granted. That Colts win, the big loss to the Colts there on Sunday night, the way that they started it against Washington. Now you got Fox with the heart situation. He's going to be out a couple weeks. It's a rally situation for Jack Del Rio. I think it's Fox strong, if you will. I'll rip that off like everybody else has. Denver starts their comeback this week from that trough. By the way, look out Kansas City because they still got to face them twice. I think the Broncos are going to come in and roll here.
I'm not with you, as you probably figured I would be. No, I know that we talk about favorites of more than 3 points off a bye, covering nearly 65%. Not a road favorite. No, thank you.
Okay.
I think Denver could be in trouble. I think actually, believe it or not, I can't wait to talk Denver KC next week because I think the value may be gone there with the Broncos because everyone's going to be expecting them to win that game, and when everyone expects something, you know what happens. I'm telling you, I think the Broncos, you talk about them kind of being in a trough. I mean, they're still 7-1 and stuff like that. I know what you're talking about. I think against the spread, they're still going to struggle.
Okay,
Especially off their head coach.
You're not picking San Diego though. You're laying off.
Yeah. San Diego's not. No, I'm not recommending this game. No. So that means your final two and my final two. Hey, we're both recommending them.
But by definition, I think we pretty much have to agree on these last two, given where your head is always at. We go to the Sunday night game. It's the 5-4 Cowboys at the 6-2 Saints. This one taking place at, yes, the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans. You talk about bounce-back spots. I think for the Saints, who just had a horrific loss, they cannot afford to fall any further off the pace of whoever wins the NFC West. And, oh, by the way, you now have Carolina fogging up the rearview mirror a little bit. This is a bounce-back situation. The Dallas Cowboys, I've said my piece about them over a period of time on the program. If they were to win this game, I would have to fundamentally readjust how I see them. That's how big and how unlikely it would be for them to rise up in this spot. They could still cover the number, but to win it outright, I think, is unthinkable. I think the Saints are going to roll in this one. I like the Saints laying the 6.5 down from 7.
Told you last week at the end of the show how much I hated that play on the Saints had against the Jets. Hated it.
Yeah, bring it up.
And guess what? I love this one. New Orleans, 17-4 against the spread. Their last 21 games at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, and most of those non-covers were last year when Joe Vitt was coaching. So I think the Saints bounce back and roll Sunday night. That is my third of 4 recommended plays. We're in agreement there.
All right, and that takes us to our last one here, my 1,000-star gold-plated lock in the millennium for NFL Week 10. It's the 3-5 Raiders traveling cross-country to the 2-6 Giants. And this is one where, again, I have been on the Giants a disproportionate number of times this year, which probably accounts for my record being as poor. This is the worst year I think I've ever had at handicapping. But, again, never let what happened earlier in the season bias you. This looks like a really good spot. The Giants, much like the Redskins, still in it in the worst division in football. They're more in it than the Raiders are in the AFC wildcard race, frankly, at 3-5. Which tells you all you need to know about their respective divisions. Raiders in maybe the best, Giants in certainly the worst. Giants have been on a little bit of a comeback the last couple of weeks here since that horrific start. I like the Giants to keep it going here. And, again, a week after the Raiders' defense was decimated, it happens again. My lock pick is the Giants laying the 7 and covering against Oaktown.
Yeah, Oakland is the only AFC West team to lose to the NFC East. You know my opinion on the Oakland Raiders when they make cross-country trips and play at 1 p.m. Eastern. It never goes well. The Giants are off a bye. I brought up that trend earlier, favorites of more than 3 points off a bye, covering roughly 65% of the time since 0-3. I'm with you. The Giants were probably not as bad as that. Unlike some of the other teams that are still winless, Tampa Bay and Jacksonville, the Giants not as bad as their 0-6 record indicated. It was a turnover bug. Terrell Pryor is no longer 100%. I don't know how the Raiders have 3 wins, quite frankly. I'm worried that this number's inflated slightly, but give me the Giants as my 4th recommended play this week. I'm with you on 2 of your 3 recommended.
Well, and you've pointed out to me in past weeks here, too, and this is one of these things where me sitting at the learning tree, trademark Undertaker, has worked. Where you've said that it is less likely for teams to get backdoored when it's a 7-point spread. That doesn't happen quite as often. Didn't stop me from making a few picks along those lines this week. But in other words, if you're looking for Oaktown to get underneath that, the fact that it's right about a 7-point line makes it less likely.
Yeah, provided, who knows? You'd hate to see the Giants, up 10 and the Raiders have the ball on the last possession of the game. But yeah, I don't think it'll even be that close. I think the Giants will come out ready. The NFC East is not a foregone conclusion. You assume Dallas will lose this week at New Orleans. The other 3 teams could all win, and it could get a lot more interesting. I'm with you on the Giants. I marked this one down. The only thing that scares me is, like I said, the number's inflated. The advanced line was closer to like 4.5. So everyone's thinking the same way we are here, which scares me.
All right, well, you're with me on 2 of my big 3, that being the Giants and the New Orleans, and the Giants being my lock pick, my other pick being Denver, your other 2 picks being St. Louis and Atlanta. So, again, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling optimistic this week, my friend. I think we're going to get it going in the right direction here for a big stretch run. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me, buddy, and looking forward to next week.
Can't wait to do it again.
All right, my friend. Thank you all for tuning in to FDH Lounge mini episode number 338.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the periodic table of elements.